The Netflix show, I've watched it. I've loved it. Because of it, I've now moved on to actually watching the sport, particularly watching the F1 races. And I love it, Jenson. Have you felt like that because of this Netflix show, because of Drive to Survive, American people have been introduced to F1, to Formula One, and have really taken a liking to it?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a great gateway really to the sport. But if the sport wasn't great, it wouldn't work, right? So it's not just down to one show. But I think the good thing is that we all love behind the scenes, don't we? We love trying to understand the personalities involved in something. And you don't get that from racing, I guess, if you just watch the sport initially, because everyone's got crash helmets on. Right. So at least you're understanding the personalities that are in those cars. And then they go, oh, actually, the racing's pretty awesome as well. And the dynamic between the drivers and the teams. So yeah, I think it's good. I mean, for me, as a purist of racing driver for years, there are certain things I'm like, nah, that's not kind of how it happens. But it's entertainment. And if it's bringing in a bigger audience into the sport, it's fantastic. And then they can really get to the nitty gritty of what is the sport about.
Do you, any part of you miss or wish that this was around when you were with F1?
The opposite. I'm so happy it wasn't around. I mean, I think, the sport probably in the 80s and 90s was the most fun because you didn't have camera phones, you didn't have this, and you just go about your racing, and it was more living in the moment. Right. So no, I'm happy that I was racing. I started racing in 2000, retired in 2016, did one race in 17, the Monaco Grand Prix, which is quite fun. But no, I had such a long career in the sport, and it was the perfect timing for me. I also went through 3 phases of Formula One. So we had the big V10 engines back in the day, and then V8s, and now the 1.6 liter V6 that we have now. So I went through different periods, which was also quite fun.
Do you think that the increased popularity and now having not just Miami, not just Austin, having Vegas next year, Jenson, is that going to produce more American race car drivers, and particularly with Formula One cars?
Yeah, I think, seeing the growth in the States is something that we've tried to achieve really from when I started in F1. We raced in Indianapolis in F1, and there were fans, but they were like diehard racing fans that had been fans for decades. Now there's a lot of more fans and interest in the sport, which is great. But I agree. I think if we had an American driver, it would bring even more fans, and they would have someone that they could truly support. I mean, you don't have to just support your homegrown drivers, but it does help, right? Right. So no, I think there'll be a lot of emphasis on working with younger drivers from the States, and hopefully developing them into a Formula One driver that could be competitive in the future. So the team that I'm racing with, we have Logan Sargent, who's doing a good job in F2. And a lot of teams are looking that direction now. One, because it's good for the sport, but we still want the driver to be great that we put into our team. You know what I mean? So they have to be skilled as well.
Obviously, know you work with Williams, and you're a guy that obviously knows how to win races. What does Williams need to do, Jenson, to get where they're competing? Not necessarily with Ferrari and Red Bull, but to get into that middle of the pack and to compete and to get points and maybe a podium here or there.
Well, yes, I do know Williams very well, and obviously winning. I started with Williams back in 2000. That's mad, isn't it?
But it's a long time ago now. It's crazy.
I know. It feels like yesterday, but no, it's great to be back with the team. They're a very passionate team, and with the new leadership and owners involved, it's definitely a new lease of life for the team. They also have the funds to put it where it's needed. Good. But with this sport, because it is so competitive, it does take time. The team understand what they need to do, but it takes time, sort of a few years to put it into practice. You obviously need great people within the team. I think Williams as a whole has had great people, but they've added to that now. Right. So I think strength and depth is what they always say in Formula One, and it's one thing that Williams does have. And now it's people just working together with the funds that have been available to build a fantastic car. And I think the great thing about Williams is the passion within the team you need. It's not just a job for these guys. They're passionate about it. They want to succeed. They want to win. And you see that emotion when they even score 1 point.
Right.
You know what I mean? Earlier this year, they scored a point, and that's a big deal for a team.
Right.
So no, in the next few years, you'll see progression and progress, which I'm really excited to be, part of.
If Mercedes, who has won as much as they have, and it's hard for them, obviously this is not easy stuff here, right?
Oh, it's unbelievably complicated to build a Formula One car. And one thing that is so important, you could have fantastic departments that build certain parts of the car, and everything comes together, and it just doesn't work as a package.
Right.
So it's a lot of it is about teamwork, and different departments working closely with each other to develop the car. But you're totally right. A team like Mercedes that's been so dominant the last 10 years, to be on the back foot. I mean, I still don't have a slow car, but it's not the quickest car. It's a surprise, and it does show how competitive this sport has become. But you look at aerodynamics; it's so complex. Aerodynamics. I don't understand. I don't understand the technicalities of the aerodynamic package that these cars have, but also the engines. They're so complicated. It's a 1.6 liter V6, which is tiny. It has a turbo. It has hybrid. And for all that to work together in the correct way to produce 1,000 horsepower and to be drivable, there's a lot of fantastic people working in this sport.